Caraval by Stephanie Garber. And I can't stand to read hardback books with the paper jacket on. So this is how it will be read without the jacket. Caraval. Caraval, Stephanie Garber. To my mom and dad for teaching me the meaning of unconditional love. And here's this beautiful, beautiful map. Caraval, Castillo Maldito. The Isle of Trisda. 1. It took 7 years to get the letter right. Year 50, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Mr. Caraval Master, my name is Scarlett, but I'm writing this letter for my sister Donatella. It's going to be my birthday soon, and she would very much like to see you and your amazing Caraval players. Her birthday is the 37th day of the growing season, and it would be the most wonderfulest birthday ever if you came. Most hopefully, Scarlett from the conquered Isle of Trisda. Year 51, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Mr. Caraval Master, it's Scarlett again. Did you get my last letter? This year my sister says she's too old to celebrate birthdays, but I think she's just upset you never came to Trisda. This growing season she'll be 10, and I'll be 11. She won't admit it, but she'd still very much like to see you and your wondrous Caraval players. Most hopefully, Scarlett from the conquered Isle of Trisda. Year 52, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Caraval Master Legend, I'm sorry I got your name wrong in those other letters. I hope that's not why you haven't come to Trisda. My little sister's birthday wasn't the only reason I've wanted you to bring your amazing Caraval players here. I'd love to see them too. Sorry this letter is short. My father will be angry if he catches me writing to you. Most hopefully, Scarlett from the conquered Isle of Trisda. Year 52, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Caraval Master Legend, I just heard the news, and I wanted to send my condolences, even though you still haven't come to Trisda or responded to any of my letters. I know you're not a murderer. I was very sorry to hear you won't be traveling for a while. Most kindly, Scarlett from the conquered Isle of Trisda. Year 55, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Master Legend, do you remember the Scarlett from the conquered Isle of Trisda? I know it's been a few years since I wrote. I heard you and your players have started performing again. My sister told me you never visit the same place twice, but a lot has changed since you visited here 50 years ago, and I truly don't believe anyone would like to see one of your performances more than I would. Most hopefully, Scarlett. Year 56, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Master Legend, I heard you visited the capital of the Southern Empire last year and changed the color of the sky. Is that true? I actually tried attending with my sister, but we're not supposed to leave Trisda. Sometimes I believe I'll never go farther than the conquered isles. I suppose that's why I wanted you and your players to come here so badly. It's probably futile to ask again, but I do hope you'll consider coming. Most hopefully, Scarlett from the conquered Isle of Trisda. Year 51, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Master Legend, this will be my final letter. I'm going to be married soon, so it's probably best you and your players don't come to Trisda this year. Scarlett Dragna. Year 57, Allentine Dynasty. Dear Scarlett Dragna from the conquered Isle of Trisda, congratulations on your upcoming nuptials. I am sorry I cannot bring my players to Trisda. We are not traveling this year. Our next performance is by invitation only, but I would look forward to meeting you and your fiancé if you could find a way to leave your isle and join us. Please accept this enclosed as a gift. From the pen of Caraval Master Legend. 2. Scarlett's feelings came in colors even brighter than usual. The urgent red of burning coals, the eager green of new grass buds, the frenzied yellow of a flapping bird's feathers. He'd finally written back. She read the letter again, then again, and again. Her eyes took in each sharp stroke of ink, every waxy curve of the Caraval Master's silver crest, a sun with a star inside, and a teardrop inside of the star. The same seal was watermarked onto the enclosed slips of paper. This was no prank. Donatella! Scarlet plunged down the steps into the barrel room in search of her younger sister. The familiar scent of molasses and oak snaked up her nose, but her scoundrel of a sibling was nowhere to be found. Tella, where are you? Oil lamps cast an amber glow over the bottles of rum and several freshly filled wooden barrels. Scarlet heard a moan as she moved past. She caught bits of heavy breathing as well. After her latest battle with their father, Tella had probably drunk too much and now dozed somewhere on the floor. Donna, she choked on the last half of her sister's name. Hello, Scar. Tella flashed Scarlet a sloppy grin, all white teeth and swollen lips. Her honey blonde curls were a mess as well, and her shawl had fallen to the floor. But it was the sight of the young sailor with his hands wrapped around Tella's waist that made Scarlet stutter. Did I interrupt something? Nothing, we can't start up again, the sailor spoke with a lilting Southern Empire accent, far smoother sounding than the sharp Meridian Empire tongue Scarlet was accustomed to. Tella giggled, but at least she had the grace to blush a little. Scar, you know Julian, right? Lovely seeing you, Scarlet, Julian smiled, as cool and seductive as the slice of shade in the hot season. Scarlet knew the polite response would be something along the lines of, good to see you too, but all she could think about were his hands still coiled around Tella's periwinkle skirts, playing with the tassels on her bustle as if she were a parcel he couldn't wait to unwrap. Julian had only been on the Isle of Trista about a month. When he'd swaggered off his ship, tall and handsome with golden brown skin, he'd drawn almost every woman's eye. Even Scarlet's head had turned briefly, but she'd known better than to look any longer. Tella, mind if I pull you away for a moment? Scarlet managed to nod politely at Julian, but the instant they'd woven through enough barrels to be out of his hearing, she said, What are you doing? Scar, you're getting married. I would think you'd be aware of what occurs between a man and a woman. Tella nudged her sister's shoulder playfully. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what will happen if father catches you, which is why I don't plan on getting caught. Please be serious, Scarlet said. I am being serious. If father catches us, I'll just find a way to blame it on you. Tella gave a tart smile. But I don't think you came down here to talk about that. Her eyes dropped to the letter in Scarlet's hands. The hazy glow of a lantern caught the metallic edges of a paper, making them blaze a shimmery gold, the color of magic and wishes and promises of things to come. The address on the envelope lit up with equal luster. Miss Scarlet Dragna, care of the priest's confessional, Trista, conquered isles of the Meridian Empire. Tella's eyes sharpened as she took in the radiant script. Scarlet's sister had always liked beautiful things, like a young man still waiting for her behind the barrels. Often, if Scarlet lost one of her prettier possessions, she could find it tucked away in her younger sister's room. But Tella didn't reach out to take this note. Her hands remained at her sides as if she wanted nothing to do with it. Is this another letter from the Count? She spat out the title as if he were the devil. Scarlet considered defending her fiancé, but her sister had already clearly expressed her thoughts on Scarlet's engagement. It made no difference that arranged marriages were very much in fashion throughout the rest of the Meridian Empire, or that for months the Count had faithfully sent Scarlet the kindest letters. Tella refused to understand how Scarlet could marry someone she'd never met in person. But wedding a man she'd never seen frightened Scarlet far less than the thought of staying on Trista. Well, Tella pressed, are you going to tell me what it is, then? It's not from the Count, Scarlet spoke quietly, not wanting Tella's sailor friend to overhear. It's from the master of Caraval. He wrote you back? Tella snatched the note. God's teeth! Shh! Scarlet pushed her sister back towards the barrels. Someone might hear you. Am I not allowed to celebrate now? Tella retrieved the 3 slips of paper hidden within the invite. Lamplight caught their water seals. For a moment they glowed gold, like the edges of the letter before shifting to a dangerous shade of bloody crimson. Did you see that? Tella gasped as swirls of silver letters materialized across the page, slowly dancing into words. Admit one. Donatella Dragna of the Conquered Isles. Scarlet's name appeared on the other. The third only contained the words, Admit one, like the other invites. This was printed above the name of an isle she'd never heard of. Isla de los Sueños. Scarlet imagined the nameless invitation was meant for her fiancé, and for a moment she thought of how romantic it would be to experience Caraval with him once they were married. Oh, look, there's more, Tella squealed as new lines of script appeared on the tickets. To be used once to gain entrance into Caraval. Main gates close at midnight on the 13th day of the growing season during the 57th year of the Elentine dynasty. Anyone who arrives later than this will not be able to participate in the game or win this year's prize of one wish. That's only 3 days away, Scarlet said, the bright colors she'd felt before turning to her usual dull shades of gray disappointment. She should have known better than to think even for a moment that this could work out. Maybe if Caraval were in 3 months or even 3 weeks, sometime after she was married, Scarlett's father had been secretive about the exact date of her wedding, but she knew it would not be in less than 3 days. Leaving before then would be impossible and far too dangerous. But look at this year's prize, said Tella, a wish. I thought you didn't believe in wishes. And I thought you'd be happier about this, Tella said. You know people would kill to get their hands on these. Did you not see the part where he said we would need to leave the Isle? No matter how badly Scarlet longed to go to Caraval, she needed to get married even more. To make it in 3 days, we'd probably have to leave tomorrow. Why do you think I'm so excited? The glimmer in Tella's eyes grew brighter. When she was happy, the world turned shimmery, making Scarlet want to beam along with her and say yes to whatever her sister desired. But Scarlet had learned too well how treacherous it was to hope in something as elusive as a wish. Scarlet sharpened her voice, hating herself for being the one to crush her sister's joy. But better she than someone who would destroy even more than that. Were you also drinking rum down here? Have you forgotten what father did the last time we tried to leave Teresa? Tella flinched. For a moment she looked at the fragile girl she pretended so hard not to be. Then just as quickly her expression changed, pink lips curving once again, shifting from broken to unbreakable. That was 2 years ago. We're smarter now. We also have more to lose, Scarlet insisted. It was easier for Talla to brush aside what had happened when they attempted to go to Caraval before. Scarlet had never told her sister the entirety of what their father had done as retribution. She had not wanted Tella to live in that much fear, to constantly look over her shoulder, to know there were worse things than her father's standard forms of punishment. Don't tell me this is because you're afraid it will interfere with your wedding. Tella gripped the tickets tighter. Stop, Scarlet grabbed them back. You're going to crinkle their edges, and you're avoiding my question, Scarlet. Is this about your wedding? Of course not. It's about not being able to get off the island tomorrow. We don't even know where this other place is. I've never heard of Isla de los Sueños, but I know it's not one of the conquered isles. I know where it is. Julian stepped out from behind several rum barrels, flashing a smile that said he'd make no apologies for listening on one private conversation. This doesn't concern you, Scarlet waved him away with her hand. Julian looked at her strangely, as if a girl had never dismissed him. I'm only trying to help. You've never heard of this isle because it's not part of the Meridian Empire. It's not ruled by any of the 5 empires. Isla de los Sueños is Legend's private isle. Only about 2 days' journey, and if you want to get there, I can smuggle you onto my shipboard price. Julian eyed the third ticket. Thick lashes lined his light brown eyes, just made for convincing girls to lift their skirts and open their arms. Tella's words about people who'd kill for the tickets echoed in Scarlet's mind. Julian might have a charming face, but he also had that Southern Empire accent, and everyone knew that the Southern Empire was a lawless place. No, Scarlet said. It's too dangerous if we get caught. Everything we do is dangerous. We'll be in trouble if we get caught down here with a boy, Tella said. Julian looked offended at being referred to as a boy, but Tella went on before he could argue. Nothing we do is safe, but this is worth the risk. You waited your whole life for this, wished on every fallen star, prayed on every ship came into port, that it would be that magical one, carrying the mysterious Caraval performers. You want this even more than I do. Whatever you've heard about Caraval, it doesn't compare to reality. It's more than just a game or a performance. It's the closest you'll ever find to magic in this world. Her grandmother's words played in Scarlet's head as she looked up the slits of paper in her hands. The Caraval stories she adored as a young girl never felt more real than they did in that moment. Scarlet always saw flashes of color attached to her strongest emotions, and for an instant goldenrod desire lit up inside her. Briefly, Scarlet let herself imagine what it would be like to go to Legend's private isle, to play the game and win the wish. Freedom, choices, wonder, magic. A beautiful, ridiculous fantasy, and it was best to keep it that way. Wishes were about as real as unicorns. When she was younger, Scarlet had believed her Nana's stories about Caraval's magic, but as she'd grown, she'd let those fairy tales behind. She'd never seen any proof that magic existed. Now it seemed far more likely that her Nana's tales were the exaggerations of an old woman. A part of Scarlet still desperately wanted to experience the splendor of Caraval, but she knew better than to believe its magic would change her life. The only person capable of giving Scarlet or her sister a brand new life was Scarlet's fiancé, the Count. Now that they were no longer held up to the lamplight, the script of the tickets had vanished, and they looked almost ordinary again. Tella, we can't. It's too risky. If we try to leave the aisle, Scarlet broke off as the stairs to the barrel room creaked. The heavy tread of boots followed, at least 3 sets. Scarlet shot a panicked look at her sister. Tella cursed and quickly made a motion for Julian to hide. Don't disappear on my account, Governor Dragna finished his descent, the sharp odor of his heavily perfumed suit spoiling the pungent scents of the barrel room. Quickly, Scarlet shoved the letters into her dress pocket. Behind her father, 3 guards followed his every step. I don't believe we've met." Ignoring his daughters, Governor Dragna reached a gloved hand toward Julian. He wore his plum-colored gloves, the shade of dark bruises and power, but at least he still had the gloves on. The picture of civility. Governor Dragna liked to dress impeccably, in a tailored black frock coat and striped purple waistcoat. He was in his mid-40s, but he'd not let his body turn to fat like other men. Keeping with the latest fashion, he kept his blond hair tied back with a neat black bow, showing off his manicured eyebrows and dark blonde goatee. Julian was taller, yet the governor still managed to look down upon him. Scarlet could see her father appraising the sailor's patched brown coat and his loose breeches tucked into his scuffed knee-high boots. It said much about Julian's confidence that he didn't hesitate before offering the governor his own ungloved hand. "Good to meet you, Sir Julian Marrero. Governor Marcelo Dragna." The men shook hands. Julian attempted to pull away, but the governor held on tight. "Julian, you must not be from this isle." This time Julian did hesitate. "No, sir, I'm a sailor, first mate of El Beso Dorado." "So you're only passing through," the governor smiled. "We like sailors here. It helps our economy. People are willing to pay a lot to dock here, and they spend more money while they visit. Now tell me, what did you think of my rum?" He waved his free hand around the barrel room. "I imagine that's what you were here tasting?" When Julian didn't answer right away, the governor pressed harder. "Was it not to your liking?" "No, sir, I mean yes, sir," Julian corrected. "Everything I've tried is very good." "Including my daughters?" Scarlet tensed. "I can smell from your breath you weren't sipping any rum," said Governor Dragna. "And I know you weren't down here playing cards or saying prayers, so tell me, which of my daughters were you tasting?" "Oh, no, sir, you have it wrong." Julian shook his head, eyes widening, as if he would never do something so dishonorable. "It was Scarlet," Tella broke in. "I came down here and caught him in the act." "No!" Scarlet cursed her foolish sister. "Father, she's lying. It was Tella, not me. I'm the one who caught them." Tella's face blazed red. "Scarlet, don't lie. You'll only make this worse." "I'm not lying. Father, it was Tella. Do you think I'd really do something like this weeks before my wedding?" "Father, don't listen to her," Tella interrupted. "I heard her whispering about how she thought it would help with her nerves before the wedding." "That's another lie. Enough," the governor joined and turned to Julian, whose brown hand was still firmly grasped in his perfumed plum glove. "My daughters have the bad habit of being dishonest, but I'm sure you'll be more forthcoming. Now tell me, young man, which of my daughters were you down here with? I think there's been some sort of mistake." "I don't make mistakes," Governor Dragna cut him off. "I'll give you one more chance to tell me the truth, or—" The governor's guards each took a step forward. Julian's eye darted to Tella. With a sharp shake of her head, Tella mouthed the name Scarlet. Scarlet tried to grab Julian's attention, tried to tell him he was making a mistake, but she could see the resolve in the sailor's face even before he answered. It was Scarlet. Reckless boy. He no doubt believed he was doing Tella a favor, when he was doing quite the opposite. The governor released Julian and removed the perfumed plum gloves. "I warned you about this," he said to Scarlet. "You know what happens when you disobey." "Father, please, it was only a brief kiss." Scarlet tried to step in front of Tella, but a guard pulled Scarlet back toward the barrels, grabbing her roughly by the elbows and yanking them behind her, as she fought to protect her sister, for it wasn't Scarlet who would be punished for this crime. Every time Scarlet or her sister disobeyed, Governor Dragna did something awful to the other as punishment. On his right hand the governor wore two large rings, a square amethyst and a sharply pointed purple diamond. He twisted both of these around his fingers, and then he pulled his hand back and struck Tella across the face. "Don't! I'm the one to blame!" Scarlet screamed, a mistake she knew better than to make. Her father struck Tella once more. "For lying," he said. The second blow was harder than the first, knocking Tella to her knees, as streams of red poured down her cheek. Satisfied, the Governor Dragna stepped back. He wiped the blood from his hand on one of the guard's vests, then he turned to Scarlet. Somehow he appeared taller than before, while Scarlet felt as if she had wilted in size. There was nothing her father could do that hurt her more than watching him hit her sister. "Don't disappoint me again." "I'm sorry, Father. I made a foolish mistake." It was the truest thing she'd said all morning. She might not have been the one Julian had tasted, but once again she had failed to protect her sister. "I won't repeat it." "I hope you mean that." The governor put his gloves back on, then reached into his frock coat and retrieved a folded letter. "I probably shouldn't give this to you, but maybe it will remind you of everything you have to lose. Your wedding will be in 10 days from today, at the end of next week, on the 20th. If everything gets in the way of it, more than your sister's face will bleed. 3. Scarlet could still smell her father's perfume. It smelled like the color of his gloves, anise and lavender, and something akin to rotted plums. It stayed with her long after he left, hovering in the air around Tella, while Scarlet sat by her side, waiting for a maid to bring clean bandages and medicinal supplies. You should have let me tell the truth, Scarlet said. He'd not have hit me this badly to punish you, not with my wedding in 10 days. Maybe he wouldn't have struck your face, but he'd have done something else just as vicious, broken a finger so you couldn't finish your wedding quilt. Tella closed her eyes and leaned back against a barrel of rum. Her cheek was now almost the color of her father's wretched gloves. And I'm the one who deserved to be hit, not you. No one deserves this, Julian said. It was the first time he'd spoken since their father left. Don't, Scarlet cut in. Your apology will not heal her wounds. I wasn't going to apologize, Julian paused, as if weighing his next words. I'm changing my offer about taking you both from the Isle. I'll do it for free, if you decide you want to leave. My ship sets off from port tomorrow at dawn. Come find me if you change your mind. He divided a look between Scarlet and Tella before he disappeared up the stairs. No, Scarlet said, sensing what Tella wanted before she said any words aloud. If we leave, things will be worse than when we return. I don't plan on returning. Tella opened her eyes. They were watery but fierce. Scarlet was often annoyed by how impulsive her younger sister was, but she also knew that when Tella finally set her mind to a plan, there was no changing it. Scarlet realized Tella had made her decision even before the letter from Caraval Master Legend arrived. That's why she'd been with Julian. From the way she'd ignored him as he'd left, it was obvious she didn't care about him. She just wanted a sailor who could take her away from Trista, and now Scarlet had given her the reason she needed to leave. Scar, you should come too, Tella said. I know you think your marriage is going to save and protect you, but what if the Count is as bad as father, or worse? He's not, Scarlet insisted. You'd know this if you read his letters. He's a perfect gentleman, and he's promised to take care of us both. Oh, sister, Tella smiled, but it wasn't the happy sort. It was the way someone smiles just before they say something they wish they didn't have to. If he's such a gentleman, then why is he so secretive? Why have you only been told his title but not his name? It's not because of him. Keeping his identity a mystery is another way of father trying to control us. The letter in Scarlet's hands proved as much. Look for yourself, she gave her sister the note. First day of the growing season, year 57, Elentine Dynasty. My dear Scarlet, this will be my last letter. Soon I'll be boarding a ship and heading to the Conquered Isles. Your father wanted to keep the date of our wedding a surprise, but I've asked him to pass on this note, because I imagine seeing each other for the first time will be enough of a surprise, though from everything I've heard about you, I expect it will be a very welcome one on my end. As I write you now, the maids are already preparing a guest suite for your younger sister. I think both of you will be very happy in Belinda. The rest of the page was missing. Not only were her groom's words cut off, but her father had been kind enough to remove any traces of the letter's wax seal, which might have given Scarlet a further indication of who she was marrying. Another one of his twisted games. Sometimes Scarlet felt all of Trista was under a dome, a large piece of glass that trapped everyone inside while her father looked down, moving or removing people if they weren't in the right places. Her world was a grand game board, and her father believed this marriage would be his penultimate move, putting all that he wanted within his grasp. Governor Dragna had more fortune than most island officials from his rum trade and other black market dealings, yet because Trista was one of the conquered isles, he lacked the power and respect he desired. No matter how much wealth he amassed, regents and nobles from the rest of the Meridian Empire ignored him. It didn't matter the Isle of Trista or the 4 other conquered isles, he had been part of the Meridian Empire for more than 60 years. The islanders were still thought of as the uncouth and undereducated peasants they'd been when the Empire had first subjugated them. But according to Scarlet's father, this union would change all that. Joining him with a noble family, it would finally grant their own some respectability, and of course it would give him more power as well. This doesn't prove anything, Tella said. It shows he's kind and considerate, and anyone can sound like a gentleman in a letter, but you know only a vile person would make a bargain with our father. Stop saying things like that, Scarlet snatched the message back. Your sister was wrong. Even the Count's handwriting illustrated thoughtfulness, neat curves, and soft lines. If he were uncaring, he'd not have written her so many letters to ease her fears or promised to take Tella with them to Elentine Empire's capital city of Belinda, a place where her father's hands could not reach. A part of Scarlet knew that there was a chance the Count might not be everything she hoped, but life with him had to be better than living with her father, and she could not risk defying her father, not when his vicious warning still echoed through her head. If anything gets in the way of it more than your sister's face will bleed. Scarlet would not jeopardize this marriage for a mere chance of winning a wish during Caraval. Tella, if we try to leave on our own, father will hunt us to the edge of the world, but at least we'll travel to the end of the world, Tella said. I'd rather die than live here or trapped in your Count's house. You can't mean that, Scarlet scolded. She hated it when Tella made such reckless exclamations. Scarlet often feared her sister had a death wish. The words, "I'd rather die," passed Tella's lips far too often. She also seemed to forget how perilous the world could be. Along with her tales of Caraval, Scarlet's Nana had also told stories of what happened to young women who didn't have families to protect them, girls who tried to make it on their own, who thought they were taking respectable jobs only to find themselves sold into brothels or workhouses with deplorable conditions. "You fret too much." Tella pushed up from the ground on wobbly legs. "What are you doing?" "I'm not waiting longer for a maid. I don't want someone fussing over my face for the next hour, and forcing me to lie in bed all day." Tella plucked her fallen shawl from the ground, and wrapped it around her head like a scarf, concealing the bruised part of her face. "If I'm going to leave on Julian's ship tomorrow, I have things to take care of, like sending a word to let him know I'll be meeting him in the morning." "Wait, you're not thinking this through." Scarlet dashed after her sister, but Tella raced up the steps and darted past the door before Scarlet could reach her. Outside, the air was as thick as soup, and the open courtyard smelled like afternoon, damp, salty, and pungent. Someone must have recently brought a haul of fish to the kitchens. The ripe odor seemed to be everywhere. Scarlet chased Tella under weather-worn white archways and through clay-tiled halls. Scarlet's father never felt as if his estate was large enough. It was on the border of a town with more land than most, so he could constantly build more. More guest rooms, more courtyards, more hidden hallways to smuggle bottles of illegal alcohol, and who knows what else. Scarlet and her sister were not allowed in many of the newest halls, and if their father caught them running off like this, he'd not hesitate to have their feet whipped. But injured heels and toes would be nothing compared to what he would do if he discovered Tella trying to leave the isle. The morning mist hadn't burned off yet. Scarlet lost sight of her sister multiple times. "Oh, hello." As Tella ventured into the foggiest corridors. For a moment Scarlet imagined she lost her completely. Then Scarlet glimpsed a silver sliver of a blue dress heading up a set of stairs to the highest point of the Dragna estate, the priest's confessional, a tall tower built out of white stones that gleamed in the sun, so everyone from town could see. Governor Dragna liked people to think he was a pious man, though in truth he would never declare his dirty deeds to someone else, making this one of the few spots on the isle where he rarely ventured, perfect for smuggling covert letters. Scarlet picked up her pace at the top of the stairs, finally catching up to her sister in the half-moon courtyard, right outside the carved wooden doors that led to the confessional. "Stop!" Scarlet called. "If you write to that sailor, I'm going to tell Father everything." The figure stilled immediately. Then it was Scarlet's turn to freeze, as the fog lifted and the girl turned around. Sharp sunlight streamed into the tiny courtyard, illuminating a young novice dressed in blue. With her head covered by a scarf, she had only looked like Tella. Scarlet had to give her devious sister credit for being good at evasion. As sweat dripped down the nape of her neck, Scarlet imagined Tella pilfering supplies somewhere else on the estate, preparing to leave with Julian the following day. Scarlet needed another way to stop her. Tella would hate her for a while, but Scarlet wouldn't let her sister lose everything for Caraval. Not when Scarlet's marriage could save them both, or destroy them if it didn't happen. Scarlet followed the young novice into the confessional. Small and round, it was always so quiet. Scarlet could hear the candles flicker. Thick and dripping, they lined the stone walls, illuminating tapestries of saints in various states of agony, while dust and dried flowers created a stale aroma. Scarlet's nose itched as she walked past a row of wooden pews. At the end of them, papers for writing down one's sins rested on an altar. Before her mother disappeared 7 years ago, Scarlet had never been inside this place. She didn't even know what to confess. People scribed their ill deeds on paper, then handed them to the priests, who set the notes on fire. Like her father, Scarlet's mother, Paloma, had not been religious. But after Paloma had vanished from Trista, Scarlet and her sister had felt desperate, and with nowhere else to go, they'd come here to pray for their mother's return. Of course, those pleas had gone unanswered, and the priests were not entirely unhelpful. Scarlet and her sister had discovered they were very discreet about delivering messages. Scarlet picked up a piece of sin paper, and carefully pinned a note. "I need to see you tonight. Meet me at Del Oggio's Beach. 1 hour past midnight. It's important. Heart." Before handing it to a priest with a generous donation, Scarlet addressed the message, but she didn't sign it. Instead of her name, she drew a heart. She hoped that would be enough. 4. When Scarlet was able to keep her from the shore, her father's guards warned her about the sparkling black sand of Del Ojos Beach. It's black because it's really the burnt remains of pirate skeletons, they said, and being 8 and slightly more foolish than now, she believed them. For at least a year she didn't venture close enough to the beach to even see the sand. Eventually, Felipe, an older son of one of her father's kinder guards, revealed the truth. The sand was just sand and not the bones of pirates at all, but the lie had already buried itself inside of Scarlet, as lies that children are told often do. It didn't matter how many other people confirmed the truth. In Scarlet's mind, the black sand of Del Ojos Beach would always be burnt pirate skeletons. As she walked there in the night, the speckled blue moon winking eerie light over the unnatural sand, she thought back to that lie. She felt it sneaking into her slippers and moving between her toes as she neared Del Ojos' rocky black cove. To her right, the beach ended at a jagged black cliff face. To her left, a broken dock, like a massive tongue, jutted into the water past stones that reminded Scarlet of uneven teeth. It was the kind of night where she could smell the moon, thick candle wax dancing with the salty scent of the ocean, full and glowing. She thought of the mysterious tickets in her pocket as the smoldering moon reminded her of how their metallic scripts blazed earlier that day. For a moment she was tempted to change her mind, giving in to her sister and to the tiny part of her still capable of dreaming, but she'd done that once before. Felipe had booked them a passage to on a schooner. She and Tella had only made it onto the boat's plank, and going that far had cost them so much. One of the guards had been especially rough with Tella, knocking her out as she dragged her back to the estate, but Scarlet had stayed conscious as she was pulled off the dock. She was forced to stand on the edges of the rocky beach, where water from glowing blue tide pools sunk into her boots, and she watched as her father took Felipe into the ocean. She should have been the one to drown that night. She should have been the one whose head her father held under the water, held until her limbs stopped thrashing and her body went as still and lifeless as the seaweed that washed onto the shore. Later, people believed Felipe had drowned accidentally. Only Scarlet knew the truth. "If you ever do something like this again, your sister will suffer the same fate," her father warned. Scarlet never told a soul. She guarded Tella by letting her believe she'd just become extremely overprotective. Scarlet was the only one who knew they could never safely leave Trista unless she had a husband who could ferry them away. Waves clapped against the shore, muffling the sound of footsteps, but Scarlet heard them. "You are not the sister I was expecting." Julian strolled closer in the dark. He looked more like a pirate than an ordinary sailor, as he moved with the practiced ease of someone Scarlet felt it would be unwise to trust. The night dyed his long coat an inky black, while shadows lined his cheekbones, turning them sharp as two knife edges. Scarlet now debated how wise it was to risk sneaking off the estate to meet this boy so late at night on such a secluded strip of beach. This was the sort of wild, reckless behavior she was always warning Tella about. "I'm guessing you've changed your mind about my offer?" he asked. "No, but I have a counter offer for you." Scarlet tried to sound as bold as she pulled out the elegant tickets from Caraval Master Legend. Her fingers did not want to release them, but she had to do this for Tella. When Scarlet had gone back to her own room earlier that evening, it had been ransacked. It was such a disaster Scarlet hadn't been able to discern exactly what her sister had made off with, but Tella had obviously been thieving things to prepare for this ill-fated voyage. Scarlet thrust her tickets toward Julian. "You can have all 3. Use them or sell them as long as you leave here early and without Donatella." "Ah, so it is a bribe." Scarlet did not like that word. She associated it too much with her father, but when it came to Tella, she'd do whatever she had to, even if it meant giving up the last thing she still dreamed about. "My sister is impulsive. She wants to leave with you, but she has no idea how dangerous it is. If our father catches her, he will do far worse than he did today." "But she'll be safe if she stays here?" Julian's voice was low, slightly mocking. "When I get married, I plan to take her with me. But she does not want to go with you?" "She'll thank me for it later." Julian bared a wolfish smile, the whites of his teeth shining in the moonlight. "You know, that's exactly what your sister said to me earlier." Scarlet's warning instincts kicked in too late. She turned at the sound of new footsteps. Tella stood behind her, her short frame covered in a dark cloak that made it seem as if she was part of the night. "I'm sorry to do this, but you're the only one who taught me there's nothing more important than taking care of a sister." Suddenly Julian clamped a cloth over Scarlet's face. Frantically, she tried to push it away. Her feet kicked up black clouds of sand, but whatever potent potion laced the fabric worked its magic fast. The world spun around Scarlet until she didn't know if her eyes were open or closed. She was falling, falling, falling. 5. Before Scarlet lost all consciousness, a gentle hand stroked her cheek. "It's better this way, sister. There's more to life than staying safe." Her words ushered Scarlet into a world that only existed in the delicate land of lucid dreaming. As a room made of all windows came into view, she heard her grandmother's voice. A pockmarked moon winked through the glass, illuminating the figures inside with grainy blue light. Younger versions of Scarlet and Tella, made of tiny hands and innocent dreams, curled together in bed while their grandmother tucked them in. Though the woman who had spent more time with the girls after their mother had left, Scarlet could not recall another night she had ever put them to bed. This was usually servants' work. "Will you tell us about Caraval?" asked Tiny Scarlet. "I want to hear about Master Legend," chimed Tella. "Will you tell us the story of how he got his name?" Across from the bed, Nana perched upon a tufted chair as if it were a throne. Coils of black pearls circled the slender neck, while more covered her arms, all the way from her wrists to her elbows as if they were lavish gloves. Her starched lavender gown was priestless, adding more emphasis to the wrinkles etching her once beautiful face. "Legend came from the Santos family of performers," she began. "They were playwrights and actors, who all suffered from an unfortunate lack of talent. The only reason they had any success was because they were as beautiful as angels, and one son, Legend, was rumored to be the most handsome of all." "But I thought Legend wasn't his real name," said Scarlet. "I can't tell you his original name," said Nana, "but I can say, like all great and terrible stories, his started with love for the elegant Annalise. With golden hair and words made of sugar, she bewitched him as he'd done to so many girls before her. With compliments and kisses and promises he should have known better than to believe. Legend wasn't wealthy then. He mostly lived on charm and stolen hearts, and Annalise claimed it was enough for her, but that her father, a wealthy merchant, would never allow her to wed a pauper. "So did they get married?" Tella asked. "You'll find out if you keep listening," Nana asked. Behind her, a cloud drifted over the moon, covering all but two tiny points of light, which hovered behind her silver hair like devil's horns. "Legend had a plan," she continued. "Elentine was about to be crowned Empress of the Meridian Empire, and if he could perform at her coronation, Legend believed it would bring him the fame and money he needed to marry Annalise. Only Legend was shamefully turned away because of his lack of talent." "I would have let him inside," said Tella. "So would I," Scarlet agreed. Nana frowned. "If you don't stop interrupting, I'm not going to finish the story." Scarlet and Tella puckered her lips into a miniature pink hearts. "Legend didn't have any magic then," Nana went on, "but he believed in the tales his father had told them. He heard every person gets one impossible wish. Just one. If the person wants something more than anything, and they can find a bit of magic to help them along. So Legend went in search of a woman who had studied enchantments." "She means a witch," Scarlet whispered. Nana paused. A tiny Tella and little Scarlet's eyes grew as wide as saucers, while the glass room transformed into wooden walls of a triangular cabin. Nana's story was coming to life before their eyes. Yellow wax candles hung from the ceiling upside down, pouring creamy smoke into the wrong direction. In the center of it all, a woman with hair as red as fury sat across from a boy made of lean lines, his head shaded by a dark top hat. Legend. Though Scarlet couldn't clearly see his face, she recognized his symbolic hat. The woman asked what he wanted most, Nana went on, and Legend told her he wished to lead the greatest troupe of players in the world had ever seen, so that he could win his true love, Annalise. But the woman warned he could not have both things. He must pick only one. Legend was as prideful as he was handsome, and he believed she was wrong. He told himself if he were famous, it would allow him to marry Annalise, so he wished for that. He said he wanted his performances to be legendary, magical. A breeze cut through the room, blowing out every candle but the one illuminating Legend. Scarlet could not clearly see his face, but she would have sworn something about him changed, as if he'd suddenly acquired an extra shadow. "The transformation began right away," Nana explained. "Its magic was fueled by Legend's true desires, which were powerful indeed. The witch told him his performances would be transcendent, blending fantasy with reality in a way the world had never witnessed, but she also warned that wishes come with costs, and the more he performed, the more he would transform into whatever roles he played. If he acted like the part of the villain, he'd become one in truth." "So does that mean he's a villain?" asked Hella. "And what about Annalise?" Scarlet yawned. Nana sighed. The witch had not lied when she said Legend could not have fame and Annalise. After becoming Legend, he was no longer the same boy she fell in love with, so she married another and broke Legend's heart. He became just as famous as he'd wished, but he claimed Annalise betrayed him, and he swore to never love again. Some would probably call him a villain, others would say his magic made him closer to a god. Both Tiny Tella and little Scarlet were halfway on the path to sleep, their eyelids more closed than open, yet their mouths both moved into upturned crescent moons. Tella twisted at the word villain, but Scarlet smiled at the mention of Legend's magic. 6. Scarlet woke with the feeling she lost something significant. Unlike most days where her eyes opened reluctantly, and she took her time stretching each limb before easing out of bed and cautiously looking around, on this day Scarlet sat up the moment her eyes flickered open. Beneath her the world rocked. "Careful there," Julian steadied her, reaching out to catch her before she tried to stand up in the boat. If the tiny tub they were in could properly be called a boat, a raft was a more appropriate name. It was barely large enough for the two of them. "How long have I been asleep?" Scarlet gripped the edges of the vessel as the rest of her surroundings came into focus. Across from her, Julian dipped 2 oars into the water, careful not to splash her as he rowed through the unfamiliar sea. The water almost looked pink, with small swirls of turquoise that swelled as the copper sun crept higher into the sky. It was morning, although Scarlet imagined more than one dawn had passed while she slept. Julian's face had been smooth when she'd last seen him, but now his jaw and chin appeared to be covered in at least 2 days of dark stubble. He looked even more disreputable than when he'd flashed that wolfish grin on the beach. "You blackguard!" Scarlet slapped him in the face. "Ow, what was that for?" A ruby welt bloomed across his cheek, the color of rage and punishment. Horror filled Scarlet at what she had done. On occasion she had trouble taming her tongue, but she'd never struck another person. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." She clutched the edges of her bench, bracing for him to strike back. But the hit she expected never came. Julian's cheek was a blaze of angry red, his jaw nothing but a series of tight lines, yet he did not touch her. "You don't need to be afraid of me. I've never hit a woman." He stopped rowing and looked her in the eye. Unlike the come-hither gaze he'd worn inside the barrel room, or the predatory look she'd seen on the beach, he now made no attempts to charm or scare her. Beneath his hard appearance, Scarlet could see the ghost of expression he'd worn as he had watched her father strike Tella. Julian had looked as appalled as Scarlet had been terrified. On his cheek, the imprint of her hand was fading as it disappeared. Scarlet could feel her terror slip away. Not everyone reacted like her father. Scarlet's fingers unclenched from the sides of her boat, though her hand still felt a little shaky. "I'm sorry," she managed again, "but you and Tella should have never..." "Wait." Scarlet stopped. The awful feeling that she lost something vital flooded back. And that something had honey blonde hair and a cherub's face with a devil's grin. "Where's Tella?" Julian dipped his oars back in the water. This time he did splash Scarlet. Icy drops of wet sprayed all over her lap. "If you've done something to Tella, I swear..." "Relax, Crimson. It's Scarlet. Same difference. And your sister is fine. You'll find her on the isle." Julian tipped an oar toward her destination. Scarlet was prepared to keep arguing, but when her eyes caught sight of where the sailor pointed, whatever she'd intended to say melted like warm butter on top of her tongue. The isle on the horizon looked nothing like her familiar Trista. Where Trista was black sand, rocky coves, and sickly-looking shrubs, this bit of earth was lush and alive. Glittering mists swirled around vibrant green mountains, all covered in trees, that rose toward the sky as if they were massive emeralds. From the top of the largest peak, an iridescent blue waterfall streamed down like melted peacock feathers, disappearing into the ring of sunrise-tinted clouds that pirouetted around the surreal isle. Isla de los Sueños, the Island of Dreams. Scarlet had never heard of the isle before seeing its name on the tickets of Caraval, yet she knew without asking that she stared at it now. Legend's private island. "You're lucky you slept on the way here. The rest of your voyage wasn't this scenic." Julian said it as if he'd done her a favor. Yet no matter how beguiling this isle was, thoughts of another isle weighed heavily on her mind. "How far are we from Trista?" she asked. "We're somewhere between the conquered isles and the Southern Empire," Julian answered lazily, as if he were merely strolling on the beach next to her father's estate. In reality, this was the farthest she'd ever been away from home. Scarlet's eyes stung as a spray of salt water hit them. "How many days have we been gone?" "It's the 13th before you hit me again. You should know your sister brought you time by making it seem as if both of you were kidnapped." Scarlet recalled the destructive way Tella had gone through all her things, leaving her room in shambles. "That's why her room was such a mess." She also left a ransom note, Julian added, so when you return, you should be able to wed your count and live happily ever after. Scarlet admitted her sister was clever, but if their father figured out the truth, he'd be livid, especially with her wedding only a week away. The image of a purple, fire-breathing dragon came to mind, coating her vision with ashy shades of anxiety. But maybe a visit to this isle is worth the risk. The wind seemed to whisper the words, reminding her that the 13th was also the date on Legend's invitation. Anyone who arrives later than this will not be able to participate in the game or win this year's prize of one wish. Scarlet tried not to be enticed, but the child inside her drank in this new world greedily. The colors here were brighter, thicker, sharper. In comparison, every hue she'd seen before seemed thin and malnourished. The clouds took on a baked bronze glimmer the closer they drew to the isle, as if they were on the edge of catching fire rather than expelling rain. It made her think of Caraval Master Legend's letter, how its gilded edges almost seemed to flame when they captured the light. She knew she needed to return home immediately, but the promise of what she might find on Legend's private isle tempted her, like those precious early morning moments, when Scarlet could either wake up and face the ruthless reality of day, or keep her eyes closed and continue to dream of lovely things. But beauty could be deceiving, as evidenced by the boy who sat across from her rowing their raft smoothly through the water, as if kidnapping girls was something he did every day. "Why is Tella already on the isle?" Scarlet asked. "Because this boat only holds two at a time." Julian splashed Scarlet again with his oar. "You should be grateful I came back for you after I dropped her off. I never asked you to take me in the first place." "But you did spend 7 years writing to Legend?" Heat rose to Scarlet's cheeks. Not only had those letters been something private she'd shared solely with Tella, but the mocking way Julian said Legend's name made Scarlet feel foolish, as indeed she had been for so many years, a child who'd yet to realize that most fairy tales did not end happily. "It's nothing to be ashamed of," Julian said. "I'm sure lots of young women write him letters. You've probably heard that he never ages, and I've heard he has a way of making people fall in love with him." "It wasn't like that," Scarlet argued. "There is nothing romantic about my letters. I just wanted to experience the magic." Julian narrowed his eyes as if he didn't believe her. "If that's true, why don't you want it any more?" "I don't know what else my sister has told you, but I would think you saw what was at stake the other day in the barrel room. When I was younger, I wanted to experience Caraval. Now I just want my sister and me to be safe." "Don't you think your sister wants the same thing?" Julian stopped moving, and let the boat drift over a gentle wave. "I may not know her well, but I don't think she has a death wish." Scarlet disagreed. "I think you've forgotten how to live, and your sister is trying to remind you," Julian went on. "But if all you want is safety, I'll take you back." Julian nodded to a speck in the distance that resembled a small fishing boat. Most likely the vessel they'd used to travel there, since their current raft was obviously not built to combat the seas. "Even if you don't know two coins about sailing, it shouldn't take you long to get picked up by someone else and return to your precious Trisda. Or," Julian paused and nodded toward the misty white isle, "if you're as brave as your sister keeps telling me, you can let me keep rowing. You spend this week with her on the isle, and see if she's right about some things being worth more than safety." A wave rocked the boat, lapping turquoise water against the sides as they drifted into the isle's ring of chilly clouds. Scarlet's hair stuck to the back of her neck as Julian's dark locks curled into waves. "You don't understand," she said. "If I wait to go back to Trista, my father will destroy me. I'm supposed to wed a count in 1 week, and this marriage is our opportunity at another life. I'd love to experience Caraval, but I'm not willing to risk my only chance at happiness." "That's a very dramatic way of looking at things." The side of Julian's mouth twitched, as if he were suppressing a smirk. "I might be wrong, but most marriages aren't pure bliss." "That's not what I said." Scarlet hated how he kept twisting her words. Julian dipped his oar in the water just enough to splash her again. "Stop doing that. I'll stop when you tell me we want to go." He splashed her once more as the boat sailed closer to the shore, and the brassy clouds began to tarnish, turning shades of green and chilly blue. There was a scent in the air Scarlet had never experienced. Trista always stank of fish, but the air here was mostly sweet with a bit of tangy citrus. She wondered if it was drugged. For although she knew what she needed to do, get to the isle, find Tella, then return home as soon as possible, she was having a difficult time telling Julian this. Suddenly she was 9 years old again, naive and hopeful enough to believe a letter could make her wishes come true. She'd first written after her mother, Paloma, had abandoned them. She wanted to give Tella a happy birthday. Her sister had been the most devastated when her mother left. Scarlet had tried to make up for Paloma's absence, but Scarlet was young and Tella wasn't the only one who desperately missed their mother. It would have been easier to let her go if she'd at least said goodbye, written a note or left a tiny hint as to where or why she'd gone, but Paloma had simply vanished, taking nothing with her. She disappeared like a broken star, leaving the world untouched save for the bits of missing light that no one would ever see again. Scarlet might have wondered if her father had harmed her mother, but he'd gone rabid since Paloma had left him, torn up the entire estate looking for her, had his guards raided the towns under the guise of searching for a criminal, since he'd not wanted anyone to discover his wife had run away. If she'd been kidnapped, there were no signs of struggle and no ransom note ever arrived. It seemed she'd chosen to leave, which made it all the worse. Yet, despite everything, Scarlet always thought of her mother as a magical person, full of glittering smiles, musical laughter, and dulcet words. When she'd been on Trista, there had been joy in Scarlet's world, and her father had been softer. Governor Dragna had not been violent toward his family before Paloma had left them. Scarlet's Nana had taken more of an interest in the girls after that. She wasn't particularly warm. Scarlet always suspected she didn't exactly like small children, but she told exquisite stories. She enchanted both Tala and Scarlet with her tales of Caraval. She said it was a place where magical lived, and Scarlet fell in love with the idea of it, daring to believe that if Legend and his players came to the Isle of Trista, they would return some of the joy to her life, at least for a handful of days. Momentarily, Scarlet entertained the idea of experiencing not only a little happiness but magic. She thought of what it would be like to enjoy Caraval just for a day, to explore Legend's private isle before closing the door on her fantasies completely. There was 1 week until Scarlet's wedding. This was not the time to embark on a foolhardy adventure. Tala had plundered Scarlet's room, and Julian said she also left a ransom note, but Scarlet's father would eventually figure out it was all a hoax. Staying here was the worst idea possible, but if Scarlet and Tala stayed only for the first day of Caraval, they could make it back in time for Scarlet's wedding. Scarlet doubted her father would figure out the truth about where they'd been that soon. They'd been safe as long as she and Tala remained for only the first 24 hours, and their father never found out where they'd really been. Time's almost up, Crimson. The cloud encasing them thinned, and the rim of the isle came into view. Scarlet saw sand so fluffy and white from the distance it looked like icing on a cake. She could almost picture Tella running her fingers along it and coaxing Scarlet to join her to see if the sand tasted as sugary as it looked. If I go with you, do you promise there will be no more kidnapping attempts if I try to return to Trissa with Tella tomorrow? Julian put a hand to his heart. On my honor. Scarlet wasn't sure she believed Julian had much honor. But once they all made it inside Caraval, he probably abandoned them anyway. You can start your rowing back up again, just be careful with the splashing. The corner of Julian's lips curved as he dipped his oars back into the water, this time soaking Scarlet's slippers with cold. I told you to stop splashing me. That wasn't me, Julian rowed again, more carefully this time, but water still soaked her feet. It was colder than ever, even Trista's crisp coast. I think there's a hole in the boat. Julian cursed as water moved up to their ankles. You know how to swim? I live on an island, of course I know how to swim. Julian shucked his coat and tossed it over the side of the boat. If you take off your clothes, it will be easier. You're wearing some sort of undergarment, right? Are you sure we can't just row to the shore? Scarlet argued. Although cold drenched her feet, her hands were sweating. Isla de los Sueños appeared to be about 100 yards away. It was farther than she'd ever swum. We can give it a go, but this boat is not going to make it. Julian removed his boots. We're better off using the time we have to undress. The water's cold. It'll be impossible to make it fully clothed. Scarlet scanned the cloud-covered water for another sign of a boat or raft. But what will we wear when we're on the island? I think we just need to worry about making it to the island. And by we, I mean you. Julian unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a row of brown muscles that made it clear he'd have no problems in the water. Then, without another word, he dove into the ocean. He didn't look back. His strong arms cut through the icy current with ease, while Arctic water rose around Scarlet until the bottom of half of her dress floated about her calves. She attempted to row, but only succeeded in sinking the boat deeper. She had no choice but to jump. The air rushed out of her lungs, something cold and unbreakable, taking its place. All she could see was the color white. Everything was white. Even the tones of the water had shifted from swirls of pink and turquoise to frightening shades of icy white. Scarlet bobbed her head to the surface, gasping for air that seared as it went down. She tried to push against the current with the same ease as Julian, but he'd been right. The corset binding her chest was too tight. The heavy fabric around her legs kept tangling. She frantically kicked, but it did no good. The more Scarlet fought, the more the ocean battled back. She could hardly keep above the surface. A wave of cold splashed over her head, dragging her all the way down. So cold and heavy. Her lungs burned as she battled to reach the surface again. This must have been how Felipe felt when her father drowned him. You deserve this, said a part of her. Like her hands, the water pressed her down, down, down. I thought you could swim. Julian wrenched Scarlet up until her head broke the surface of the water. Breathe. Slowly, he coaxed. Don't try to take in too much at once. The air still burned, but Scarlet managed the words. You left me because I thought you could swim. It's my dress, Scarlet broke off as she felt it dragging her down once more. Julian took a sharp breath. You think you can stay afloat for a minute without my help? He brandished a knife with his free hand, and before Scarlet could agree or protest, he darted under the water. Scarlet felt as if forever went by before she felt the pressure of Julian's arm wrapping around her waist. Then the tip of his knife pressed against her breast. Scarlet's breath caught as the sailor cut away her corset, drawing a decisive line down her stomach to the center of her hips. The arm around her waist tightened, and so did something in Scarlet's chest. She'd never been in such a position with a boy. She tried not to think about what Julian was seeing or feeling as he finished slicing the heavy dress and pulled it off her body, leaving only her wet chemise clinging to her skin. Julian gasped as he resurfaced, splashing Scarlet's face with water. Can you swim now? His words were more labored than before. Can you? Scarlet asked hoarsely. Her ability to speak strained as well. It felt as if something very intimate had just happened. Or maybe it was intense only for her. She imagined the sailor had seen lots of girls in various states of undress. We're wasting our energy with talk. Julian started swimming, this time staying close to her side, though she couldn't tell if it was because he worried about her safety or if he was weak from helping her. Scarlet could still feel the ocean working to drag her under, but without her heavy gown she could fight it. She neared Suenos' gleaming white shore at the same time as Julian. Up close to the sand looked fluffier, and now that she thought about it, much more like snow, more than she'd ever seen on Trista, resting clouds of magical white. A gold carpet stretched across the entire shore, all eerily untouched. Don't give up on me now. Julian grabbed Scarlet's hand, tugging her toward the perfect tufts of white. Come on, we need to keep moving. Wait! Scarlet scanned the crisp snow a second time. Again it reminded her of a frosted cake, the kind she'd seen in a bakery windows, perfect and smooth without so much as a talent-sized footprint in the snow. Where's my sister? 7. The island's gauzy clouds had sailed into a position covering the sun and casting the coastline in a haze of gray-blue shadows. No longer white, the untouched snow at Scarlet's feet wrinkled up at her with periwinkle sparkles, as if it were in on some private joke. Where's Tella? Scarlet repeated. I must have dropped her off on a different part of the beach. Julian reached for Scarlet's hand again, but she pulled away. We need to keep moving or we're both going to freeze. Once we warm up, we can find your sister. But what if she's freezing too? Donatella! Scarlet yelled between chattering teeth. The snow beneath her toes and the wet fabric clinging to her icy skin left her colder than she'd been the night her father had made her sleep outside after he discovered Tella had kissed her first boy. Still, Scarlet was not going to leave without finding her sister. Donatella! You're wasting your breath, dripping wet and shirtless. Julian looked more dangerous than usual as he glared at Scarlet. When I dropped your sister off, she was dry. She had on a coat and gloves. Wherever she is, she's not going to freeze, but we will stay here. We should head for whatever's between those trees. Past where the beach's mantle of snow met lines of thick green trees, a spire of sunset orange smoke twisted into the sky. Scarlet could have sworn it hadn't been there a moment ago. She didn't even remember seeing the trees. Different from the bony shrubs on Trista, all of these trunks looked like thick braids, twisted together and covered in snowy blue and green moss. No, Scarlet shivered. We can't keep walking around like this, Julian cut her off. Your lips are turning purple. We need to locate the smoke. I don't care if my sister is still out there. Your sister probably left to find the entrance to the game. We have only until the end of the day to make it inside Caraval, which means we should follow the smoke and then do the same. He marched ahead, bare feet crunching the snow. Scarlet's eyes darted around the untouched beach a final time. Tella had never been good at patiently waiting, or even impatiently waiting, but if she had gone into Caraval, why were there no signs of her? Reluctantly, Scarlet followed Julian into the forest. Bits of piney needles stuck to toes she could no longer feel as a chestnut dirt path replaced the snow. But while her feet left damp footprints, she saw no marks from Tella's heeled boots. She probably took a different route from the beach. Julian's teeth didn't chatter, and his brown skin was taking on an indigo hue, matching the tree's distorted shadows. Scarlet wanted to argue, but the wet fabric of her clothes was turning to ice. The forest was colder than the coastline had been. She wrapped frigid arms across her chest, but all that did was add to her chill. A flicker of concern crossed Julian's features. "We need to get you somewhere warm, but my sister is smart enough to already be inside the game. If you freeze out here, you're not going to find her." Julian's arm wrapped around Scarlett's shoulders. She stiffened. His dark brows formed an offended line. "I'm just trying to keep you warm, but you're freezing too, and practically naked." Scarlett pulled away, half stumbling. As the forest of trees came to an end, the soft dirt floor transformed into a firmer road, paved with opalescent stones, smooth as polished sea glass. The cobbled road stretched farther than she could see, multiplying into a maze of twisting streets. All were lined and mismatched, rounded shops, painted shades of jewels or pastels, piled on top of one another like sloppily stacked hat boxes. It was charming and enchanting, but it was also unnaturally still. The shops were all closed, and the snow on their rooftops rested like dust on abandoned storybooks. Scarlett didn't know what sort of place this was, but it was not how she imagined Caraval. Sunset smoke still streamed in the air, but it looked as far away as when they were on the beach. "Crimson, we need to keep moving." Julian urged her down towards the curious street. Scarlett didn't know if it was possible for the cold to make her hallucinate or if there was just something wrong with her head. On top of it being strangely quiet, none of the signs on the hatbox-shaped shops made any sense. Each was printed in a variety of languages. Some said, "Open sometime around midnight." Other signs said, "Come back yesterday." "Why is everything closed?" she asked. Her words came out in fragile puffs. "And where is everyone?" "We just need to keep going. Don't stop walking. We need to find somewhere warm." Julian pressed forward, past the most peculiar shops Scarlett had ever seen. There were bowler hats covered in taxidermy crows, parasol holders, women's headbands studded with human teeth, mirrors that could reflect the darkness in a person's soul. The cold was definitely toying with her vision. She hoped Julian was right and tell it was someplace warm. Scarlett continued searching for her glimpses of her sister's honey blonde hair, listening for echoes of her vibrant giggles, but every store was empty and silent. Julian tried a few doorknobs. Nothing budged. The following row of abandoned shops boasted a series of fantastical things: fallen stars, seeds to grow wishes, Odette's ocular sold eyeglasses that saw the futures, available in 4 colors. "Those would be nice," Scarlett muttered. Next door to Odette's, a banner claimed its shop proprietor could fix broken imaginations. That message floated above bottles of dreams and nightmares and something called daymares, which Scarlett imagined she was experiencing the moment as icicles formed in her dark hair. Beside her, Julian cursed. Beyond several more boxes of hatbox-shaped shops, she could almost see where the smoke came from, and now it was twisting into a sun with a star inside, and a teardrop inside of the star, the symbol for Caraval. But the cold had reached into Scarlett's bones and her teeth when her eyelids were turning frosty. "Wait, what about there?" With a trembling hand, Scarlett waved Julian toward Kasabian's clocks. At first she thought it was just the brass window lighting, but behind the glass, past a forest of pendulums and weights, and shiny wooden cabinets, a fireplace blazed, and a sign on the door said, "Always open." A chorus of tick-tocks, cuckoos, second hands, and wind-up gears greeted the frozen couple as they dashed inside. Limbs Scarlett had stopped feeling prickled from the sudden warmth, while the heated air scorched her lungs as it went down. Her frozen vocal cords cracked as she called, "Hello?" Tick-tock, tock, tick. Only gears and cogs answered back. The shop was round like a clock's face. The floor was tiled in a mosaic of different styles of numbers, while various timepieces covered almost every surface. Some ran backwards, others were full of exposed wheels and levers. On the back wall several moved like puzzles while their pieces strung together as the hour approached. A heavy glass locked box in the center of the open room claimed that the pocket watch inside wound back time. Another day Scarlett would have been curious, but all she cared about was getting closer to the roaring circle of warmth coming from the fireplace. She would have gladly melted into a puddle in front of it. Julian pulled the grate away and stoked the logs with a nearby poker. We should get out of our clothes. Scarlett stopped her protest when Julian crossed over to a rosewood grandfather clock. 2 sets of boots rested at its feet, and 2 hangers of garments were swinging from the pendants on each side. "Looks like someone is watching out for you." The mocking lilt had returned to Julian's voice. Scarlett tried to ignore it as she inched closer. Next to the clothes, on top of the gilded table, covered in moon dials, a curvy vase of red roses sat next to a tray laden with fig bread, cinnamon tea, and a note. For Scarlet Dragna and her companion. I'm so pleased you could make it. Legend. The message was written on the same gold-edged paper as the letter Scarlet had received on Trista. She wondered if Legend went to such pains for all his guests. It was difficult for Scarlet to believe she was special, yet she couldn't imagine the master of Caraval bestowed personalized greetings and blood-red roses upon every visitor. Julian coughed. Do you mind? The sailor reached past Scarlet, pulled off a hunk of bread, and yanked down the set of clothes meant for him. Then he started undoing the belt holding up his pants. You going to watch me undress? Because I don't mind. Immediately embarrassed, Scarlet looked away. He had no decency. She needed to dress as well, but there was no place to do it safely concealed. It seemed impossible that the room had grown smaller since they'd arrived, yet she could now see how truly minuscule it was. Less than 10 feet of space lay between her and the front door. If you turn your back to me, we can both change. We can both change facing each other, too. There was a smile in his voice now. That's not what I meant, Scarlet said. Julian chuckled under his breath. But when Scarlet brought her head up, his back was to her. She tried not to stare. Every inch of it was muscled, just as his torso had been. But that wasn't the only part that captivated her attention. A thick scar disfigured the space between his shoulder blades. 2 more crossed his lower back, as if someone had stabbed him multiple times. Scarlet swallowed a gasp and felt instantly guilty. She shouldn't have been looking. Hastily she grabbed the clothes meant for her and focused on dressing. She tried not to imagine what could have happened to him. She wouldn't want anyone seeing her scars. Mostly her father just left bruises, but for years she'd dressed herself without the help of a maid so no one would see. She had imagined that experience would come in handy now. But the dress Legend left her would require no assistance. It was rather plain, disappointing, the opposite of how she'd imagined clothes from Caraval. There was no corset. The bodice fabric was an unappealing shade of beige with a flat skirt. No petticoats or underskirts or bustles. Can I turn around now? Julian asked. It's nothing I haven't seen before. The firm way he gripped her waist while he'd sliced off her dress instantly came to mind, making her tingle from her breastbone down to her hips. Thank you for that reminder. I wasn't talking about you. I barely even saw you. Not making it better, but you can turn around, she said. I'm buttoning my boots. When Scarlet looked up, Julian was in front of her, and Legend definitely had not given him an unattractive set of clothes. Scarlet's eyes traveled from the midnight blue cravat around his throat to the fitted burgundy waistcoat it tucked into. A deep blue tailcoat emphasized strong shoulders and a narrow waist. The only item reminiscent of the sailor was the knife belt slung over the hips of his slender pants. You look different, Scarlet said. It no longer appears as though you've just come from a brawl. Julian stood a little straighter as if she'd complimented him, and Scarlet wasn't sure she hadn't. It didn't seem fair that someone so infuriating could look so close to perfect, although despite his crisp clothes he still appeared far from gentlemanly, and it wasn't just his unshaven face or the choppy waves of his brown hair. There was simply something wild about Julian that could not be tamed by Legend's garments. The sharp planes of his face, the shrewd look in his brown eyes, they weren't minimized because he now wore a cravat or a pocket watch. Did you steal that? Scarlet asked. Borrowed, Julian corrected, twirling a chain around his finger. Same as the clothes you have on. He looked over and nodded approvingly. I can see why he sent you tickets. What's that supposed to mean? Scarlet broke off as she caught her reflection in the glass of a mirrored clock. No longer dull shades of bland, the dress was now a rich cerise, the color of seduction and secrets. A stylish row of bows ran down the center of a fitted bodice with a scooped neck, set off by a matching ruffled bustle. The skirts beneath were scalloped and fitted to her form, 5 slender tiers of different fabrics alternating between cerise silk and tulle, and bits of black lace. Even her boots had changed from dull brown to an elegant combination of matching black leather and lace. She ran her hands over the material of her dress to make sure it wasn't just a trick of the mirror or the light. Or maybe in her frozen state she'd only thought of the dress had been drab before. But deep down, Scarlet knew there was only one explanation. Legend had given her an enchanted gown. Magic like this was only supposed to live in stories, but this dress was very real, leaving Scarlet unsure what to think. The child inside her loved it. The grown-up Scarlet wasn't sure she felt quite comfortable in it, whether it was magical or not. Her father would never have let her wear something so eye-catching, and even though he wasn't there, attention was still not a thing she craved. Scarlet was a pretty girl, though she often liked to hide it. She'd inherited her mother's thick, dark hair, which complemented her olive skin. Her face was more of an oval than Tella's, with a petite nose and hazel eyes so large she always felt like they gave away too much. For a moment she almost wished for the drab beige frock. No one had noticed girls in ugly clothes. Maybe if she thought about it, the dress would shift again, but even as she visualized a simpler cut and a plainer color, the cherry gown remained vibrant and tight, clinging to curves she'd rather have concealed. Julian's cryptic words came to mind. I can see why he sent you tickets. And Scarlet wondered if she'd found a way to escape her father's deadly games on Trista, only to become a well-costumed piece on a new game board. If you're finished admiring yourself, said Julian, should we search for that sister you're so eager to find? I would think you'd be worried about her as well, said Scarlet. Then you think too highly of me. Julian started toward the door as every chime in the shop rang out. You might not want to exit that way, said an unfamiliar voice. 8. The rotund man who had just entered the shop looked a bit like a clock himself. The mustache on his dark, round face stretched out like a minute and hour hand. The shiny brown frock coat reminded Scarlet of his polished wood, his brass suspenders of cable pulleys. We weren't stealing, Scarlet said. You should only speak for yourself. The man's baritone voice fell several octaves as he focused two narrowed eyes on Julian. From dealing with her father, Scarlet knew it was best not to appear guilty. Don't look at Julian. Yet she couldn't help but glance. I knew it, said the man. Julian reached for Scarlet as if to push her toward the door. Oh no, don't run out. I'm only kidding, the stranger called. I'm not Kasabian. I'm not the owner. I'm Algie. And I don't care if your pockets are stuffed with clocks. Then why are you trying to stop us from leaving? Julian's hands were on his belt, one reaching for his knife. This boy's a bit paranoid, isn't he? Algie turned toward Scarlet, but she was feeling sage-shaded colors of suspicion as well. Was it just her, or were the clocks on the wall ticking faster than before? Come on, she said to Julian. Tella's probably worried to death about us by now. You'll find whoever you're looking for faster this way. Algie stepped over to the rosewood grandfather clock, opened its glass door, and tugged on one of its weights. As he did, the metallic puzzle clocks on the wall shifted. Click-clack. Their pieces snapped together, rearranging into a magnificent patchwork door with a notched count wheel in place of a handle. Algie waved an arm theatrically. Today only, for a bargain price of 2 of you can use this entrance, a shortcut into the heart of Caraval. How do we know it's not just an entry into your basement? Asked Julian. Does this feel like the door to a cellar? Look with all of your senses. Algie touched the door's notched wheel, and at once every clock in the shop went quiet. If you leave this shop the other way, you'll be spit into the cold, and you'll still have to pass through the gates. This will save you precious time. He released the handle, and all timepieces started moving once more. Tick-tock, tock-tick. Scarlet wasn't sure she believed Algie, yet there was obviously something magical about the portal on the wall. It felt a bit like the dress she wore, as if it took up a little more space than everything else around it. And if there was a shortcut into Caraval, then she would find her sister faster. What will it cost us? Julian's dark brows slanted up. You're actually considering his offer? If it will get us to my sister faster. Scarlet would have expected the sailor to be all for shortcuts, but instead his eyes darted around almost nervously. You think it's a bad idea? She asked. I think the smoke we saw in the entrance to Caraval, and I'd rather keep my currency. He reached for the front door. But you don't even know the price, said Algie. Julian threw a look at Scarlet, pausing for the click of the second hand. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes, and when he spoke again, she would have sworn his voice sounded strained. Do whatever you want, Crimson, but just a friendly warning for when you do get inside. Be careful who you trust. Most of the people here aren't who they appear. A bell chimed as he stepped outside. Scarlet hadn't expected him to stay with her forever, yet she found herself more than a little bit unnerved by his abrupt departure. Wait, Algie called as she started to follow. I know you believe me. Are you just going to chase that boy and let him decide for you, or make a choice for yourself? Scarlet knew she needed to leave. If she didn't hurry, she'd never find the sailor, and then she'd be utterly alone, but Algie's use of the word choice made her pause. With her father always telling her what to do, Scarlet rarely felt as if she had any genuine choices, or maybe she paused because the part of her that had not quite let go of all her childhood fantasies wanted to believe Algie. She thought of how effortlessly the door had formed and how every clock had gone silent when Algie had touched the door's peculiar handle. Even if I was interested, she said, I don't have any money. But what if I'm not asking for money? Algie straightened the tips of his mustache. I said I'm offering a bargain. I'd just like to borrow your voice. Scarlet choked on nervous laughter. That doesn't sound like a fair trade. Was a voice even a thing someone could borrow? I only want it for an hour, Algie said. It will take you at least that long to follow the smoke and make it to the house and start the game. But I can let you inside right now. He pulled a watch from his pocket and wound both the hour and minute hands to the top. Say yes, and this device will take your voice for 60 minutes, and my door will lead you right inside the heart of Caraval. She could find her sister right now. But what if he was lying? What if he took more than an hour? Scarlet was uncomfortable trusting a man she just met, even more so after Julian's warning. The idea of losing her voice terrified her as well. Her cries had never stopped her father from hurting Tella, but at least Scarlet had been able to call out. If she did this and something happened, she'd be powerless. If she saw Tella from a distance, she'd be unable to tell her name. And what if Tella was waiting for Scarlet at the gate? Scarlet only knew how to survive through the caution. When her father made deals, there was almost always something awful he failed to mention. She couldn't risk that happening now. I'll only take chances with regular entrants, she said. Algie's mustache drooped. Your loss. It really would have been a bargain. He pulled open the patchwork door. For a brilliant moment, Scarlet glimpsed the other side, a passionate sky made of melting lemons and burning peaches, thin rivers that shined like polished gemstones. A laughing girl with curly spires of honey. Donatella! Scarlet rushed for the door, but Algie slammed it shut before her fingers grazed the metal. No! Scarlet grabbed the notched wheel and tried to turn it, but it dissolved into ash, falling into a gloomy pile at her feet. She watched hopelessly as the puzzle pieces shifted again, clicking apart until the door was no more. She should have made a trade. Tella would have done it. In fact, Scarlet figured that was how her sister had gotten inside in the first place. Tella never worried about the future or consequences. It was Scarlet's job to do that for her. So while she should have felt better knowing Tella was definitely in Caraval, Scarlet would only worry about what kind of trouble her sister would find. Scarlet should have been in there with her. And now she had lost Julian as well. Hurrying out of Kasabian's shop, Scarlet rushed onto the street. Whatever warmth she'd felt inside immediately vanished. She hadn't thought she'd been there very long yet. The morning had already disappeared along with the early afternoon. The hatbox shops were now obscured in a din of leaden shadows. Time must move faster on this isle. Scarlet worried that she would blink and the stars would be out. Not only had she been separated from Tella and Julian, but she'd wasted valuable minutes. The day was almost over, and Legend's invitation said she only had until midnight to make it inside Caraval's main gates. Wind danced along Scarlet's arms, wrapping cold white fingers around the parts of her wrists and her dress didn't cover. Julian, she cried out hopefully, but there was no sign of her former companion. She was totally alone. She wasn't sure if the game had started yet, but she already felt as if she were losing. For a panicked moment, she thought the smoke had disappeared as well, but then she spied it again. Past the darkened storybook shops, sweet-smelling rings of it still made their way into the sky, rising out of a massive brick chimney, attached to one of the largest houses Scarlet had ever seen. 4 stories high, with elegant turrets, balconies, and flower boxes, full of bright and pretty things, white candy-topped flowers, magenta poppies, tangerine snapdragons, all somehow untouched by the snow which had started falling again. Scarlet hurried toward the house, a new chill sliding over her as footsteps approached and she heard a low chuckle emerge from the flurry of white. You didn't take Grandfather Clock up on his offer? Scarlet jumped. No need to be scared, Crimson. It's just me. Julian emerged from the shadows of a nearby building, just as the sun finished setting. Why haven't you gone in yet? She pointed toward the turreted house, half relieved not to be alone, half nervous to see the sailor again. A few minutes ago, he'd rushed out of the clock shop. Now Julian sauntered closer as if he'd had all the time in the world. His tone seemed warm and friendly when he said, Maybe I was hoping you'd show up. But Scarlet found it difficult to believe he'd just been standing there waiting for her, especially after the abrupt way he'd left her. There was something he wasn't telling her, or maybe she was paranoid from having lost Tella in the clock shop. She told herself she'd be with her sister soon enough, but if Scarlet couldn't find her once they were inside. The wooden mansion appeared even larger close up, sprawling towards the sky as if its wooden beams still grew. Scarlet had to crane her neck to see the entirety of it. A 50-foot tall iron fence curled around it, formed into shapes both vulgar and innocent. They seemed to move, even to perform. Prince and girls being chased by naughty boys, witches riding tigers and emperors atop elephants, chariots pulled by winged horses, and in the center of it all hung a brilliant crimson banner, embroidered with the silver symbol of Caraval. If Tella were there, they might have giggled together the way only sisters could. Tella would have pretended not to be impressed, though secretly she would have been delighted. It was not the same with the strange sailor, who looked neither delighted nor impressed. After how he'd helped her that day, Scarlet had to admit he wasn't quite the scoundrel he seemed, but she also doubted he was the simple sailor he appeared. He eyed the gate suspiciously, the set of his shoulders tense, the lines of his back rigidly straight. All of the laziness she'd witnessed on the boat had vanished. Julian was now a boxed coil, tightly wound as if preparing for some sort of fight. "I think we should go farther down and look for a gate," he said. "But see that flag?" Scarlet said. "This has to be where we get in. No, I think it's farther down, trust me." She didn't, but after her last blunder, she also didn't trust herself. And she didn't want to be left alone again. About 20 yards down, they found another flag. "This looks exactly like where we were before. Welcome!" A dark-skinned girl on a unicycle pedaled out from behind the banner, cutting Scarlet off. "You're here just in time." The girl paused, and one by one, glass lanterns hanging from the tips of the gate lit up with flames. Brilliant gold-blue sparks, the color of childhood dreams, thought Scarlet. "I always love it when that happens," the girl on the unicycle clapped. "Now, before I can let either of you find people through, I need to see your tickets." Tickets? Scarlet had forgotten all about the tickets. "Ah, don't worry, love, I have them." Julian placed an arm around Scarlet, tugging her unexpectedly close, and he had called her love? "Go along with it, please," he whispered in her ear as he reached into his pocket and retrieved 2 slips of paper, both a little wilted and wrinkled from their dip in the ocean. Scarlet held back from saying anything as her name appeared on the first. Then the unicyclist held the other one note to one of the gate's candlelit lanterns. "That's unusual. We don't normally see tickets without names." "Is there a problem?" Scarlet asked, suddenly uneasy. The unicyclist looked down at Julian, and for the first time her bright demeanor faded. Scarlet was about to explain how she'd received the tickets, but Julian broke in first, his arm pressing harder against her shoulders in what felt like a warning. "Caraval Master Legend sent it. The 2 of us are getting married. It gifted the tickets to my fiancée Scarlet." "Oh," the cyclist clapped again. "I know all about the 2 of you, Master Legend's special guests." She looked at Scarlet more closely. "I should have recognized your name. I'm sorry, so many names. Sometimes I forget mine." She laughed at her own joke. Scarlet tried to muster a chuckle as well, but all she could think about was the arm wrapped around her as Julian's use of the word fiancé. "You want to make sure you hold on to these." The unicyclist reached through the gate, passing the tickets back to Julian, and for a moment her eyes fastened on him as if there was something else she wanted to say. Then she seemed to think better of it. Breaking her gaze, she reached into the pocket of her patchwork vest and pulled out a scroll of black paper. "Now, before I can let you 2 in, there's one more thing." She quickened the pace of her pedaling, kicking up milky slivers of snow from the ground. "This will be repeated again once you're inside. Master Legend likes everyone to hear it twice." She cleared her throat and pedaled even faster. "Welcome, welcome to Caraval, the grandest show on land or by sea. Inside you'll experience more wonders than most people see in a lifetime. You can sip magic from a cup and buy dreams in a bottle, but before you fully enter into our world, you must remember it's all a game. What happens beyond this gate may frighten or excite you, but don't let any of it trick you. We will try to convince you it's real, but all of it is a performance, a world built of make-believe. So while we want you to get swept away, be careful of being swept too far away. Dreams that come true can be beautiful, but they can also turn into nightmares when people won't wake up." She paused, pedaling her cycle faster and faster until the spokes of her wheels seemed to disappear, vanishing in front of Scarlet's eyes as the wrought iron gate parted. "If you're here to play the game, you'll want to take this path." A curving lane to the girl's left lit up with puddles of burning silver wax that made the way glitter against the dark. "But if you're here to watch," she nodded right, and a sudden breeze swayed hanging paper lanterns to life, casting a pumpkin orange glow above a sloping trail. Julian dipped his head closer to Scarlet. "Don't tell me you're considering just watching." "Of course not," Scarlet said, but she hesitated before taking a step in the other direction. She observed the candles flickering against the cool night, the shadows hiding behind the darkened trees and flower bushes that lined the sparkling route into the game. "I'm only staying for a day," she reminded herself. The night of Caraval Eve. 9. The sky was black, the moon visiting some other part of the world, as Scarlet took her first step into Caraval. Only a few rebel stars held posts above, watching as she and Julian crossed the threshold of the wrought iron gate into a realm that for some would only ever exist in wild stories. While the rest of the universe had gone suddenly dark, the grand house blazed with light. Every window shimmered with buttery illumination, turning the flower boxes below into cradles full of stardust. The citrus scent from before was gone. Now the air was syrupy and thick, still much sweeter than the air on Trista, yet Scarlet only tasted bitter. She was too aware of Julian. On the heavy weight of his arm around her shoulders, and the way he'd used that arm to sell his lies. She'd been too nervous to argue at the gate, too eager to get inside and find her sister, but now she wondered if she hadn't gotten herself into another mess. What was all that about? She finally asked, pulling away when they were past the unicyclist but not quite the mansion's great doors. She stopped right outside of its ring of alluring light, next to a fountain where its tinkling water would mute their words in case anyone else started down the path. Why didn't you just tell the truth? Truth? Julia made a dark sound that wasn't quite a laugh. I'm fairly certain she would have liked that. But you had a ticket? Scarlet felt as if she were missing a joke. I'm guessing you think that girl seemed nice and she would have eventually let me in. Julian took a meaningful step closer. You cannot forget what I told you at the clock shop. Most of the people here are not what they appear. That girl gave a performance meant to make you drop your guard. They say they don't want us to get too carried away, but that is the point of this game. Legend likes to play. The word rolled out unevenly, as if Julian had meant to say something else and changed his mind at the last moment. Every guest is chosen for a reason, he continued. So if you're wondering why I lied, it's because your invitation was not meant for a common sailor. No, Scarlet thought. It had been meant for a count. A panicked vermilion moved inside of her chest as she recalled how specific Legend's letter had been. The other ticket was meant for her fiancé, not the wild boy who stood across from her, untying his cravat. Scarlet was risking enough by deciding to stay and play the game for one day. Pretending to be engaged to Julian made her feel as if she were asking to be punished. Who knew what she and Julian might be pushed to do together as part of the game? Even if Julian had helped her earlier, lying for him had been a mistake and there would always be consequences for that. Her entire life was evidence of this. We need to go back and tell the truth, she said. This isn't going to work. If it gets back to my fiancé or my father that I behaved as if we're... In a flash, Scarlet's back was pressed against the fountain, and Julian's hands were spread out on either side of her, so much larger than her own. Crimson, relax. His voice sounded uncommonly soft, as though he spoke. Relaxing instantly felt impossible. With every word, he leaned in closer until the house and lights had disappeared and all she could see was Julian. None of this will reach your father or your devoted count. Once we enter that house, the game is all that matters. No one here cares about who anyone is when they're out on the Isle. How do you know that? Scarlet asked. Julian flashed a wicked smile. I know because I've played before. He pushed away from the fountain. The bright lights of the turreted house reappeared, but a chill descended on Scarlet's shoulders. No wonder he seemed to be such an expert. She should not have been shocked. From the moment she had first spied him on Trista, she had sensed he wasn't to be completely trusted, but it seemed like he was hiding even more than she thought behind Legend's tailored clothes. So that's why you helped me and my sister make it to this isle, because you wanted to play again? If I said no, that I did it because I wanted to rescue you from your father, would you believe me? Scarlet shook her head. With a shrug, Julian leaned back, pulled his cravat off, and tossed it over Scarlet's shoulder. A gentle splash sounded as if it had landed in the fountain. It now made sense why he'd seemed so sure of himself, why he'd crossed the aisle full of purpose and rather than wonder. You're looking at me as if I've done something wrong, he said. Scarlet knew she shouldn't have been upset. They were nothing to each other, but she despised being deceived. She'd have enough of that to last a lifetime. What's your reason for coming back to Caraval? Do I need to have a purpose? Who doesn't want to see the magical Caraval players or win one of their prizes? For some reason, I don't believe that. She might have thought he was there for this year's prize, the wish, but something in her core told her that wasn't true. Wishes were things of wonder that took a certain amount of faith, and Julian seemed the type to trust only what he saw. The game was different each year, but a few things were rumored to be the same. There was always some sort of treasure hunt involving a supposedly magical object, a crown, a scepter, a ring, a tablet, or a pendant, and the winners from the previous years were always invited back with a guest. Though Scarlet didn't imagine that would be a draw for Julian either. not when he was good at finding people to help him get in. If Scarlet wasn't even sure she believed in wishes, she could not fathom Julian was after one. No, it was not dreams or wishes, or of the magical or fantastical that drew him to this isle. Tell me the real reason you're here, she said. Trust me when I say you're better off not knowing. Julian affected a curious expression. It will only spoil your good time. You're just saying that because you don't want to tell me the truth. No, Crimson, this time I am telling the truth. His eyes locked onto Scarlet's, unmoving and unflinching, a gaze that required complete control. With a shudder, she saw that the lazy sailor from the boat had practically been in act, and if he desired, she realized Julian could have kept that performance up, continued to play the part of a boy who'd happened upon her and her sister this entire game by accident. But it was as if he wanted Scarlet to see there was more to this story, even if he refused to say what it was. I'm not going to argue with you about this, Crimson. Julian straightened, stretching taller while he flexed back in his shoulders, as if he'd arrived at a sudden decision. Believe me when I say I have good reasons for wanting inside that house. If you want to go and turn me in, I won't stop you or hold it against you, even though I did save your life today. You only did that so that I could be your ticket into the game. Julian's face went dark. Is that really what you think? For a moment, he looked truly wounded. Scarlet knew he was trying to manipulate her. She'd had enough experience to recognize the signs. Unfortunately, despite her lengthy history of being used by her father, or perhaps because of it, she was never good at evading it. No matter how much she wanted to avoid Julian, she couldn't ignore the fact that he had saved her life. What about my sister? This lie might affect your relationship with her. I wouldn't call it we had a relationship. Julian flicked a piece of lint off the shoulder of his tailcoat, as if that was how he pictured Tella. Your sister was using me as much as I used her. And now you're doing the same with me, Scarlet said. Don't look so put out about it. I played this game before. I can help you, and you never know, you might actually enjoy it. Julian's voice took on a flirtatious rhythm as he turned back into a careless sailor once more. A lot of girls would feel lucky to be you. He brushed a cool finger against Scarlet's cheek. Don't, she backed away, her skin tingling where he touched her. If we do this, there can be no more of this unless absolutely necessary. I still have a real fiancé. So just because we're saying we're engaged doesn't mean we need to behave like it when no one is watching. The edge of Julian's mouth tipped up. Does this mean you're not going to turn me in? He was the last person Scarlet wanted to partner with, but she also didn't want to risk staying on the isle longer than one day. Julian had played before, and Scarlet had a feeling that she would need his help if she wanted to find her sister quickly. Just then a new party of people arrived at the gate. Scarlet would hear the dim clamor of their distant chatter, the echo of the girl on the unicycle clapping. Inside the house, violin music richer than the darker chocolate started playing. It seeped outside and whispered to Scarlet as Julian's smile turned seductive, all shameless curves and immortal promises, an invitation to places that proper young ladies didn't think about, let alone visit. Scarlet didn't want to imagine what sort of things that smile had convinced other girls to do. Don't look at me like that, Scarlet said. It doesn't work on me. That's why it's so fun. Okay, I'm going to stop here. We've reached chapter 10, which I feel like is a good place to stop for now. I'll read more later. Goodbye for now. Thank you for listening.